on during the breaks. So if you want to keep your conversations private, I would stay away from them. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor. Let's move on, turning to the regular agenda. Board of Supervisors sitting as other boards, Flood Control District Board. What's the pleasure of the board on item 6?
Madam Chair.
Supervisor Elias.
Yeah, I got a number of questions about this item. Because it is unusual in several different ways, but it concerns me. And I don't know, Mr. Huckleberry, maybe you can help with some of these answers at this point. You know, we saw some charts here in the background information about the different levels of important riparian habitat and zero riparian habitat that's being affected by this project. But I don't see anything that really explains in any detail the calculation of how this dollar amount was come to. Because basically Rosemont wants to pay an in lieu fee rather than mitigating the damage that they're inflicting on this part of the Sonoran Desert. So, you know, I didn't see anything that really explained those calculations and what they're based on. So, I don't know, that's the first question.
Essentially, how do we arrive at the dollar amount?
Yeah, because it's delineated into different types of riparian areas and levels of importance and underlying zero riparian habitat issues that arise related to those designations, and it seems to escalate according to how important those parcels are. So, was this Rosemont's fantasy? Was this based on a table that we create? I mean, so far, the mitigation standards that they've offered on all their stuff, the Army Corps has a big problem with, the EPA has a big problem with, so I'm feeling very uncomfortable.
Mr. Huckleberry.
Yes, Madam Chair and Supervisor Elias. This is an ancillary facilities for extension of utilities to a use.
Right.
And so what you have is that, unlike the Rosemont mining proposal, it is exempt from our regulations. So the pit itself, the dumping of the waste materials, and all of the other activities, the plant site, they're all, while they're destroying significant amounts of riparian areas, they are exempt because of state law, which exempts mining. The development of the water line to the site, as well as the electric utility line, is not. And therefore, what you see is our application of our code related to repair and restoration. And we can provide those calculations to you. You may have other questions because, again, the mixing of exempt mining with non-exempt uses. And I think what we could probably do, if you're interested in this, is continue this, and we can provide you the detailed calculations that come from our flood control staff, and a classification of the areas based on the mapping and the important riparian habitat ordinances that we have. We have always brought, as you know, these items to the board for their approval, and they usually involve a small use or small encroachment or infringement, generally. And the in lieu fee component means that the staff has deemed that there's no appropriate on-site mitigation that represented by the owner. So that's another issue that we probably have to take a look at to see if, in fact, there is on-site mitigation. Utility corridors are difficult because of the access requirements, and so that may be the reason, but I'm not sure. I did not obviously participate in a great extent in this process. And so I think if the board's not comfortable with approving it at this point, what you might do is you can either continue to kind of certainly remove it, and if you have questions, I'd be happy to have the staff provide the detailed responses that you have, and obviously, this doesn't limit you to asking a question or referring something to me. If you think of it, after whatever you do with this item.
Sure,
we'll be
sure.
happy to continue.
Yeah, because there's a number of them that arise, number of questions that arise, but they all are based on that in lieu fee and how that's really put together and how meaningful it's going to be if in fact they offer no mitigation themselves, that they can't do it other than that money, and I understand that. And a staff's decision and all of that works into it too, but it's fairly complicated and it doesn't really make sense until you start to flesh out how those numbers were really created.
Thank you, Supervisor.
I got another issue that I wanted to bring up too as well, Chuck, because I think it's very important too. The Arizona Corporation Commission has made its approval of that electrical transmission line dependent on Rosemont obtaining its other permits for operation before they'll approve that electrical line. And the Corporation Commission is not exactly known as being, an entity that's given to making rash decisions about this kind of thing. They've made that decision to delay approving that electrical line until Rosemont has the rest of its permits. I'm wondering if Pima County shouldn't do the same thing along these lines, and wondering what are the legal ramifications of that. So I think we would need to hear from council on that, in addition to the questions about the mitigation proposal itself and how it's put together. So once we get those answers back, I think we need some time to ask some questions about it as well. So I don't even know what's a good plan for following on that one.
So you're essentially, if I understand you, you're indicating that they don't have a record of decision, nor do they have their Clean Water Act or 404 permit yet.
Exactly.
So even to bring this forward at this point in time is premature, is that you're...
Absolutely. And I want to know the legal ramifications of that, and I want to know how those numbers were created, given the fact that we're saying that there's no way to mitigate the damage that's being done. And a number of sides are saying.
I guess then, you bring a good point, you make a good point. Why is this coming before us now? What was the timing? And I guess that's a question we want to answer. I don't know that we can do that today, but it's curious. It does seem premature at this point. Supervisor Carroll, I think you have.
I do. And I welcome Mr. Huckleberry to comment as well on this issue. First off, I want to support Mr. Elias's extension of the Corporation Commission review of this because of the fact that that body is made up of a track record of decisions based on the fact of business and what they approve. But them conditioning this certainly provides me with the same type of questions. If we could reach Mr. Elias, it would be across the aisle, but for me, those are my friends at the Corporation Commission. If we could get a comment from their attorney or their counsel to explain to us how they felt putting these conditions on provided certainty and safety for the project long term, and citizens that elect them certainly have to approve and influence that decision. So I agree that there should be I don't know what time certain, but there should be a delay here to give us a chance to hear from not only the Corporation Commission, from our own attorneys, but also I agree with the notion that the record of decision from the Coronado National Forest approves the plan of operations only after the clean water section of the 404 permit is issued by the United States Army Corps of Engineers. So it's for me something that I hate to rush into. If we could get more information, it would be prudent, I believe, to postpone this. Thank you.
Okay, let me ask a procedural question, because I get a sense of where the board might be headed on this, to our council. Or to Mr. Huckleberry, whoever is the appropriate respondent, is there any reason why we can't remove this from the agenda at this point in time, and then have staff bring it back to us with the responses we requested, or do we have to remove it or continue it for a time certain?
Well,
to the two motions.
Madam Chairman of the Board. I think the preferred route would be to continue to a time certain, which would be the first meeting in May. And I would suggest that there be at least 4 areas that we would examine. And one of the issues that we have is we're not quite sure at this point whether there's any time limits with regard to a submission of approval. And so that's one of the things we look at. But it's not one of the 4 or 5 things that you've asked for. And what I have is how we calculated the reparative impacts in those calculations, the issue of on-site versus in-lieu and why. The third issue is, and there is 2 legal issues I think we're trying to determine how to look at it. One is, can it be a conditional approval, which means you approve subject to, or can it be a delayed approval, meaning that you won't take any action until the other permits are secured. The third question I think is the chairs, why are we processing it and why are we proceeding now independent of the other mining activity? I think we can get that answered. And I think the 4th or 5th issue that I heard was the Arizona Corporation Commission and the reasoning with regard to how they issue their permit and whether their permit was preconditioned on any other actions. And so we don't know that. It's probably going to take us, I guess that's probably the longest time frame in which to make an inquiry to get an answer in writing from the Corporation Commission.
So what is the pleasure of the board then?
Madam Chair,
Supervisor Lewis.
I'm going to move that we continue this item until we have answers to the questions that Mr. Huckleberry just repeated right now in his answer to us. He's suggesting May 1 is enough. I'd like to make sure that we have those legal answers in hand
So
before
90
we consider
days,
this item.
we need a time certain.
We do need a time, sir. I didn't hear that from my attorney. I heard that from Mr. Huckleberry.
The procedural requirements of the ordinance are not absolutely clear on this, but I think it's generally preferable to have a time certain. If we come back in time and we're not ready, we'll tell you at that time.
Okay. I would give us 90 days then and ask that we have an answer, come back to see if we're ready at that point to even make that decision. Okay?
Second.
There's a motion and a second to continue for 90 days. Are there any objections?
Madam Chair, I'd just like to comment that I agree with Supervisor Elias that there was a lack of information, and so I will go ahead and approve this, waiting the 90 days.
Okay, if there are no objections, then motion carries unanimously. Keith von Heinigen.
Morning, my name is Keith Van Heinigen. I'm not German. The reason so many cameras are in this room, ladies and gentlemen, children, are simply the abhorrent and misogynist behavior of some of our board members. That's why they're here. That's why they'll stay. If you're so worried about the desert, Richard, why are you guys so hot and bothered to build a major highway up the west side of Tucson for 30 odd miles or whatever it is? Just want to ask these questions because the local newspaper seems to fail miserably. Okay, Pima Animal Shelter from your bond advisory committee, 32,000 square feet for people, just under 12,000 for the animals. The cost is huge, $22 million, $503 per square foot. That's about 5 times what it costs to build the average home. It's over twice what it costs to build a hospital. Is it gold plated? Are all of our bond issues in this county filled with 300% worth of graft, corruption, kickbacks? Where's it go? I looked into it. Most of the people on this bond advisory committee and think they'd be smarter than that. County-city relationship in this area is incestuous. The voters trust you to file. Taxpayer dollars you waste. The citizens you apparently despise. Illegal alien invaders, though, we love. Job creators you abuse. I.e. Rosemont, Raytheon, the Air Force, Great Canyon University, doesn't matter. Honor, most of you have none. Then again, 13 out of 14 of the city leadership and county leadership are Democrats. May God have mercy on your souls, because the monster you have created in your citizens will not. Now, we can go on for days, but the simple fact is, on the 28th of March, Judge Sotomayor of the Supreme Court in U.S. versus Castleman changed our constitutional Bill of Rights forever. It is now the Bill of If. So now we have a tyrant in the White House, tyrants in the Supreme Court, tyrants in the Senate. The only people doing their job are in the House of Representatives, and me. You'll all have a long way to go. I don't know how much more that the people will stand before they finally wake up. These questions I asked also of our Arizona Daily Star. Where are the articles on the questions I asked? How duplicitous and how obvious is it? When it comes down to simple facts, they don't lie. They've got a great piece of paper today. Morrow Valley, Sarita, great places, safest places around. It takes to the end of the article to say, oh, by the way, Tucson, well, it's the least safe place to live in the state. But then again, I'll say it again. That's because they voted 86% Democrat for the last 73 years.